What's going on, everybody? Welcome. It's Thursday, May the 16th. May the 16th. I realize my game's kind of messed up here. This is the 1.89 release party, y'all, or what would this be? Matt, is this the April release of Visual Studio Code? We're always a month. It's the prior month. Somebody nod. Chat. I think it's the April release. What's up, Celine? What's up, Uni? How's it going? Hello from Indonesia. Sweet. So we got a lot of cool stuff to talk about today. We've got two engineers here. One who's going to talk about improvements to /fix in Copilot and TypeScript. /fix is one of the most used commands in GitHub Copilot. Let me know in the chat if you use /fix. Curious about that. And then we're going to talk to Matt Bierner, who's going to talk about Markdown. Markdown is one of the most widely used use cases for Visual Studio Code. A lot of people use it for Markdown. We're always working to make improvements there, and I think you're really going to like some of these. I know I am, especially if you do some blogging. So anyway, we're glad you're here. Before we get started, though, as usual, we have a new release, which means we want to thank our contributors. All right. So for the 1.89 release, y'all, we have a ton of contributors. Thank you so much. Carrie, Chapman, John Murray. Again, we see John Murray all the time. Frank is here. What's up, Frank? George, John, Martin. That's incredible. It goes on and on and on. Please, if you have a chance, make sure you scroll down to the bottom of the release notes and check out all of the folks who work so hard to make Visual Studio Code what it is. You can see it just kind of goes on and on and on. Thank you so much to our contributors from the community. We love you. Thank you so much for all that you do for Visual Studio Code. All right, so with that, let's get right into our guests today. The first one is Nathan. What's up, Nathan?
Good. Yeah.
How's it going?
Good.
Tell us a bit about who you are and what it is that you say that you do here.
Yeah, so I'm Nathan, and I work on the TypeScript compiler team. So I spend most of my time making sure that people can compile TypeScript. I've actually in the past spent a lot of time on JavaScript support. So I don't know if you know that, but the JavaScript support in VS Code is powered by TypeScript. We just treat it like untyped TypeScript, basically.
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, and so like a while back, it's less common now, but I spent a lot of time making sure that like really old JS stuff like pre-classes, pre-modules, all that stuff worked well. So I spent a lot of time looking at JavaScript, which is fun.
Awesome. I'm a JavaScript developer myself, although probably not nearly the caliber that you are. Chat, what are y'all working in? Who here's doing JavaScript? Listen, either you love JavaScript or you don't love it. Either way, I know you have an opinion about it. Just put it in the chat. We'd love to hear it. So Nathan, you've been working on some stuff for TypeScript, and specifically you've been working with Copilot and linting. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so when we started looking at AI stuff, I first started focused on AI for TypeScript and did some stuff there. I might show that later. But after I had worked with it for a bit, I was like looking at ESLint, and ESLint has tons and tons of really good lint rules, and they have these errors, and you can fix some of them automatically. It's like maybe a third or a little bit more than a third have automatic quick fixes. And I was looking at all the ones that didn't, and I thought, well, maybe AI could help us with this. And then I learned about /fix, and I was like, oh, this is great. This is perfect. So I went off and got super into ESLint for like a couple weeks and wrote a whole bunch of examples and ran fix on all of them. And I found somewhere it did amazing job, and somewhere it did kind of a bad job. It would do something, but it wasn't the thing you wanted it to do.
Right.
And so I started looking at how to make it do the thing that it should have done. And then I went off and wrote some more tests. Actually, I wrote a lot of ESLint. I wrote a lot of bad code that ESLint then told me was bad code, and then tried to fix it basically
on purpose.
Yeah,
that's actually kind of hard to do, right? Like when you're trying to write bad code, and I know this because I do a lot of demos, and so I'm trying to show like, here's in a state, let's have Copilot fix it, and it's hard to do. Sometimes, Nathan, I'll even ask Copilot, I'll write some code and I'll be like, break this in a subtle way, or introduce a bug here, and it can't or it won't do that. It'll be like, sure, and it'll introduce a bug, but it's not really a bug. It's more just like an edge case. When I'm asking, I want an error, right? Like I want this squiggly, it won't do that.
Yeah, I'm not surprised about that, but yeah, you'll see some bad code. I've got some pretty wonky code here that I can show off.
Yeah, somebody said Copilot can be good at writing bad code. Sadly, not on command. Fair enough.
Yeah, that's me.
AI, both both a boon and a bane. I love and hate JS. I code with it anyways. How do you feel about JS, Nathan?
That's exactly my feelings. I love it because it's bad, um, but it's also good, and you can't really tell, and it's pretty great.
Nathan, when
Um,
I was starting out as a developer, I started with I did Adobe Flex, which was like ActionScript, and then I did C Sharp, and I hated C Sharp mostly because I just felt like a terrible developer. Because it's a structured language, right? You have to know what you're doing, and then I got into JavaScript, and I was like, oh, this is where it's at, right? Like basically, you can just do whatever you want, right? There's no
and
there's
maybe
no
it
guide
works.
rails. Yeah,
Yeah,
it immediately made sense to me and it made me feel like I was a good developer. So I'm thankful to JavaScript for that.
yeah, yep.
All
I feel
right,
like
well,
JavaScript is a good language for joke code. Like I said, you'll see some funny code here.
yeah, let's do it. Let's jump right into it. I know you got a bunch of really interesting demos on this.
Yeah, so let me show off. I'll start with some pretty good lint rules actually. If you don't use ESLint, you should be using ESLint because it has some great stuff that catches silly mistakes. So for example, I've got some code here, and I wrote a while loop, and there's this rule no unmodified loop condition, and it's pretty simple and doesn't catch everything, but in most of my while loops are like while something, and I just have a truthy check. And in this case, I've got while start, and then I've got something, and the no unmodified loop condition has an error if you say while start and then forget to use start in the body of your loop,
So
which I did.
the start is not modified in this loop. In other words, so this is to
Yeah,
stop you from getting into a condition where the loop just runs and never
correct.
exits.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And so what my error here was that I assigned start to node and then forgot that 2 lines later, which this is totally something I do in real life. And I will stare at this for a really long time, trying to figure out why I have an infinite loop here because it's like I'm iterating over start. What's the deal? So uh, this is a great pointer to say, hey, start is not modifying this loop. And I'm like, what? But it is, but it's not. So this really helps me notice when something's wrong. But with Copilot, when you ask for a fix, like you even get to skip the part where you're like, what? But it's not because Copilot can look at it when doesn't really have your same assumptions and can immediately say, "Oh, yeah, that should be while node, not while start." Um,
Man, I mean, that's super helpful. It's the little things like that that always it's super frustrating and you lose a lot of momentum on that.
yep, exactly. I've done that in the last week. Just stupid mistakes that took a long time to figure out. So this is actually something where Copilot's really good because like there's not too much code and the error is subtle, but it's all localized. Um, And the error, let me go back and so you can see the error again. The error there is sort of pointing you toward the right direction of like, look at start, hey, figure it out, and then look at the loop. And so
And
with clear
yeah.
instructions and like not too much code to look at, that's all local, then Copilot does a really good job
And what
of just,
extension are you using there to get that the inline error right there?
oh, that's it's called Error Lens. It's great. Yeah, I actually use another one called Hover Lens, which it does basically the same thing except it's just whatever the hover would be. So there's the hover, but when my cursor's on it right here, I get the hover inline too. I just like
Does
inline
error
stuff.
lens work for other languages as well? I guess it just takes what's in the
Oh,
problems view and sticks it up in the
yeah, totally. Yeah, this is language independent stuff. So it
very
stops.
nice. So prior then I guess ESLint, we're talking about ESLint or TSLint?
ESLint. TSLint's the old one that is deprecated.
Okay. So ESLint can't fix this. All it really offers you is the ability to toggle that setting off.
Yeah. So ESLint kind of puts some stuff in here that look like quick fixes, but all it's really offering is ignore it. or maybe
Yeah.
ignore it for the whole file.
That's one way to
Um,
solve the problem.
yeah, totally. I mean, well, the lint rules are not always right, so it kind of makes sense. So I can imagine a case where that you'd want to turn this off. Um, uh, but yeah, the problem with this is that there isn't necessarily a single fixed thing you would do to fix this. It isn't like you're like, oh, well, just say start here. Okay, problem fixed.
Right.
Really. So, um, yeah, it's something that you kind of need a little bit of flexibility to figure out. And like Copilot doesn't need to be too smart to figure this out, and it's perfect for it.
Awesome. And so
So,
are
yeah.
we is does Copilot then must know about the linting rule, I assume?
No, actually, all it's getting is the error plus the code that's wrong. So it sees basically the prompt is something like, "Hey, I've got this error, and here's the code. Can you fix it?"
So it gets
So
the linting error plus the code to get the
yeah,
answer
yep,
versus
and
just the code.
yeah, yeah. It doesn't just get the code with a mysterious fix the error. It actually also gets the error text as a clue, which is
Gotcha.
yeah, it helps quite a bit.
All right.
Yeah, so let me show you a case where this goes wrong. Actually, so there's another really good rule actually. It's called no-dupe-else-if, and then there's a no duplicate case version too. Um, I think this one's turned on by default with ESLint. If it's not, you should definitely have it because what it does is it checks to make sure you never have exactly the same text in an if else chain. So in this case, say I was writing this thing called is deep blue SQL. You take in some two unknown things and you check if they're equal using some sort of loosey goosey rules at the base of it. The problem is you have to recur several times if you have an array. And when I was developing this, I just cut paste the cases and updated them because like that's kind of how you would do it. If you have three different cases and they're basically the same, you're just probably going to copy them. And then I forgot to update this one. So fortunately, ESLint this rule catches this, and then it says this branch can never execute. Its condition is a duplicate or covered by previous conditions. So when I look at this, like to me, it looks like, oh, I should probably update this to be right. The problem is that the text says this branch can never execute, which makes Copilot sort of look at its training, and I'm pretty sure what's happening is it's hitting training that there's lots of text on the web about optimizers and control flow analysis and dead code elimination, and so as soon as it says this branch can never execute, it sort of, I think, is going off and saying, "Oh, well, what do I do with dead code?" Obviously, delete it, right? Because there's all of these
Right.
optimizer, textbooks and things saying, "Here's how you do this inside of an optimizer." But the problem is we're in an editor, not an optimizer, and I'm writing code, not compiling it. Um, and so the what I really need is a way to tell Copilot, "No, actually keep it." So what I did was I added just a nudge inside the prompt that says, "If you see this error over here, um, don't delete it. Keep it around and try to fix it." And so if you don't have that nudge, it just deletes this. Like Copilot just delete it. If you do have that nudge, then it will say, ah, okay, well, I've got what? Triple equal, and then I've got less than, probably should have greater than, which
Wow.
is the right fix. So,
See,
uh,
at this point, the AI is functioning a little bit more like an actual pair programmer, right? Where it's doing some actual thinking, right? Like if you and I sat down and you had the error, the to say just well then just delete it is a bit of a lazy answer,
yeah,
right?
pretty
Like
much.
I'm not really I really looked at the code at that point. So it's kind of I find it fascinating that as the AI gets better and better, it actually functions more like a human in the sense that it's like, well, what are you trying to do? Not just what fixes the problem.
Yeah. And I mean, it's still kind of pattern matching on a pattern of less than equal less than what comes next, greater than. And you can see this like this example. This is so don't trust these quotes. They're also Copilot generated. But imagine you have an enum with some Hamlet characters in it, and you cut paste, cut paste, cut paste. Um, Copilot can do the same thing here, where you have two Hamlets in a row. What should you do? Well, you should look back at the enum and then figure out which one was missing. And in this case, Fortinbras was the one we were missing, and Copilot can figure that out. And it's basically doing the same thing as up here. It's pattern matching and saying, what have we got? What's the duplicate? Compare it to this thing. What's missing? And then it puts it in there.
And so previously it would have just removed that, or
Oh yeah, totally. It would just say, well, you got a duplicate. Well, that's wrong. That's dead code. It's like, well, yeah,
or
it's dead
commented
code,
out.
but
Yeah.
I meant it for it to be live code. Hey, how about I show one more?
Yeah,
But
let's do it.
so this is maybe I'm easily impressed, but I think this is a pretty impressive example. There's a kind of badly named but pretty useful error called no-new, and it's sort of aimed at new programmers that don't know OO or like the functional style in JavaScript very well. But basically, what it says is don't just say new something and expect to use side effects for it. So if you look at the constructor here, in fact, like the constructor saves some properties, but then it does a bunch of side effecting work, which if you've done OO, you know you're not basically not supposed to do that.
In a
And
constructor.
yeah, you shouldn't basically say new constructor and then the constructor goes off and does a bunch of work and then says okay done, which is kind of what this thing is doing. In fact, it prints something to the console, so like it doesn't even return anything.
So do not use new for side effects. Is that because you're passing parameters to the constructor, or because it
No, it's
knows that?
because you're not using the result for anything. In fact, like this thing doesn't have any useful it doesn't have anything useful after the fact except like file name, which you've just passed in. So there's no you don't get any information out of this object when it's done. Like it works entirely by
So if you just assigned it to a variable, would that error go away?
it definitely would. And in fact, that's what Copilot does by default. If you don't tell it the fix for what a better fix for this is, it's like, well, save the result, I guess.
Yeah, that's what
Which
I would think. That would be
yeah,
my.
but in fact, what this error really means is, you're that object is wrong. It's like it's not like this line of code that's wrong. It's the object that's wrong. You should go back to your object and try to fix your code.
You're
And
doing
like
something that's potentially bad practice that could
yeah,
hurt you.
yeah. And so this is where like Copilot can't get it every time. This is not a ton of code, and it's kind of a rookie mistake. But um, hey, you know, Copilot's good for new programmers too, and it can like even if it doesn't get the right answer, it can usually push you in the right direction. So if we fix with using Copilot, usually this will rewrite my code into a set of functions, which in my opinion, I don't like classes a whole bunch, is probably the right solution here. Yeah. So
Well,
like I
it
said,
rewrote the whole class.
it rewrote the whole class and it got rid of the class entirely because it's like, well, the whole class existed for side effects. And
So just do
that's
those
those are
things.
yeah, that should be a function that returns void, not a class that you construct with new. So it does that, and then it says, "Oh wait, let's pass stuff around." And so now we're passing things around and returning values, and so it works the way you'd expect
That
like
is
a real model.
wild. So
Yeah,
what's super interesting here, Nathan, is that one of the concerns that people generally have about GitHub Copilot, and rightly so, is that for junior developers or folks who are just getting started, that it will teach them or allow them to do bad things, things that we shouldn't do that ordinarily as a human we wouldn't write, but maybe the AI will write it or just let it go.
yeah,
But in this case, it's doing the exact opposite. It's catching something that might not otherwise be caught and then showing you the right way to do that.
yeah. So like I said, the ESLint's name for this rule is kind of bad, and the error message is not very useful. Like you looked at it and thought, well, I should assign it to a variable.
Yeah,
But
that's what I would
it
have
is
done. Yeah.
it is a really good rule for new programmers or people who are new to OO because it is a prod that says, "Hey, you should look at your code again." And Copilot can also look at your code and like I said, it doesn't always get it right. In this case, it got it right, and it's super useful. But like sometimes it'll it'll give you like a less useful fix, but it'll still push you in the right direction. Like say either refactoring the class to not do a work in the constructor or else use a closure or something like that. So,
Man, that's
yeah,
awesome. So
yeah,
for you ESLint people out there, your life just got a lot better, especially if you got Copilot. So what would you say? Just try the slash fix if you've got
yeah,
a linting error or errors in general.
Well, let me show one more thing here. This is
Yeah.
sort of in progress work. It's uh, so after I was working on ESLint, I tried to go back to TypeScript, and I'm looking at one of the most popular errors to try to fix, but also one of the hardest ones where the types are wrong. Um, and so this is actually a pretty common thing. But I mean, if you program in TypeScript, you're going to get type errors all the time because it's catching mistakes you're making. So in this case, actually, the parameters are almost right. It's just swapped. So the only way you can tell this is by looking at the signature. But if you see the signature is address string, that's fine.
Right. The
Then
timeout
timeout's
and
a
the
number and loose is a Boolean, but I've passed them backwards down here. So I've got loose, false, and timeout last.
but
And
that's
TypeScript,
not what the error says.
yeah, the TypeScript is basically super focused. The TypeScript error is super focused. It's just saying Boolean is not assignable to number, which is true. And the problem is that the fix could be any number of things. And so TypeScript doesn't want to like prescribe something. And so it just tells you exactly what's wrong in, fairly formal language. Um, and in fact, with just this and without the ability to look at connect, because connect is an import, so there's no way for in like the old versions of Copilot for it to go grab the source of connect. Um, it would say, well, I don't know, the closest number to false is 0, right? And you just stick a 0 in there, which if you do that, then it you just get another error here a second later.
Right. It's just
So
not
it's
going to
not
work.
actually gonna help. Yeah. So actually what you do need to do is swap the things. So I've added the ability for this TypeScript error to go look for the source of connect and add it into the context that Copilot gets. And when it gets that, then it's fine. It can figure out that the thing is swapped.
And it swaps them.
Yeah.
So to me, this is the real promise of Copilot is that it's what the editor knows versus what the AI is capable of put together. Because the editor technically knows what's going on here. By knows, I mean it knows what the shape of the method is. It knows, and so
Yeah.
if you combine that with the error, with the user input, the AI should be able to figure out to swap them, which is exactly what this does.
Yeah. Because like by default, Copilot would just sort of you just get handed a line of code and say fix this. It's like, well, I don't know. Okay. But if you give it some instructions and context, it does a lot better.
So
Um,
Nathan, you told me something once that I thought was interesting, where you said that for AI, like a lot of the things that we can do with AI for developers who use it, they're like, why doesn't that just work? Right? Like, why doesn't the TypeScript compiler just look at that and be like, hey, these two parameters are swapped? Because that isn't how these things are actually very difficult to
yeah.
solve, but
Mhm.
solvable with AI, but not necessarily that impressive. An
Yeah.
impressive,
Exactly.
what's the word? All this
Um,
power of AI, and this is what it's doing. It's swapping parameters, but it
yeah.
allows us to solve these problems that were previously unsolvable.
Yeah. It's very impressive if you know where AI was 15, 20 years ago. Um, it's astounding it can do it. On the other hand, it's still not super smart. And you know, it gets this answer right, but it messes up on a bunch of other stuff. I'm still working on this. I'm trying to add like other example calls, so it's actually useful to go find other calls to connect as well, because those are probably right. Hopefully right. And so if you include those in the prompt as well, then it can do even better. Um,
Totally agree.
so
So yeah,
yeah.
Sean, I agree with you. Copilot's not perfect, but it is great.
Yeah, it
Um,
can be helpful already. So go ahead and try this one out. I'm continuing to improve this particular error and probably related type errors because that's what people really want to try to fix using /fix.
and just real
Uh,
quick, for Delicious, I believe Control F is now Control Alt F if you're in the File Explorer. We changed that because people hit Control F a lot on accident in the tree view, a lot. And so it's now Control Alt F, I believe. Try to give that a try. All right, Nathan, can we do one more? Can we do the
yeah.
extract method?
So this is let me see here. I've got it in here somewhere. So um, this is been in here for a while, but you may not have noticed it. So if you're writing, say you write a compiler as you do, and you've got a binary expression that's like x plus y or x minus y or something. Um, and it extends other expressions and so on and so on. And all of a sudden you realize, oh, wait a minute. In addition to compiling, I also want to be able to print out this thing, like for pretty printing purposes, or just you need to compile it or something like that, just for errors or things like that. So you add this interface formatable that has format that returns string, and you add it to the expression class, and then you say implements formatable here, and you realize, wait a minute, I'm gonna have like, I don't know, a couple hundred of these classes, and I have to go through and add formatable to every single one of them, and it's not gonna be very hard, but it's also gonna be like a couple hundred of them.
You have to implement formatable in every
Yeah,
single
and
one.
so it's
Yeah.
not hard, it's just a lot of work. And so, actually, TypeScript already has something that gets you halfway there. So if you say implement, uh, what was it? Hold on, let me undo. It says
Implement.
implement inherited abstract class. Okay. Um, so you go there and it says, okay, format string, throw new error, and then, oh, I have
And
every
then
if
you
then.
have to implement it. It
Yeah,
basically
yeah.
just does the signature for you.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, I guess that is useful. It's something, but it's half of the thing I wanted. So I added a thing that says um, with Copilot, and all it does is it runs this, and then it says, "Hey Copilot, can you implement this for me?" And it implemented. Okay, shoot. Well, it hold on. Let me. I see what happened. It deleted my class.
There we go.
Yeah, so that's an unfortunate side effect sometimes of Copilot's. Our diff algorithm is not perfect, and I believe we're working on a fix that still needs to ship in TypeScript because it needs information from TypeScript. But uh, right now, it's some messes things up. So it writes the contents for you here, and it's pretty smart. Like it's seen binary expressions before enough to know that it's basically left operator right. In other words, it's like x plus y, and it
Right.
doesn't put spaces in between and puts left on the left and right on the right. It even knows that like it should be recursive. And so if you've got a left expression, you should be calling format on it recursively. If you have a right expression, you should be calling format on that recursively. And you don't need to do that for strings because strings are just strings. Um,
I mean, that's wild.
yeah, and it
That it
yeah.
knows that the implementation details is crazy. People say it's just a powerful autocomplete, but it feels
I
like so
mean,
much more
so
than that.
I think what it is, there are other classes like this. Like format is kind of like a two string, and people have put compilers on GitHub before. Um, and so it's probably seen something like this and is able to sort of smush the two together and say, well, this is probably what you want. Um, and yeah, it's sort of combining two different pieces of its training to figure out what you want there.
This
But
stuff
yeah,
just
and
continues to blow my mind. What a time to be a developer, man. I
yeah, and
mean,
so you can go through and just blast through a couple hundred of these. I mean, again, you need to make sure they're right, and you should run tests and things, but it still saves a lot of time because it's just a lot of grunt work of form. It's just hard to type, honestly. all
well,
the
that
all
was
the.
awesome. Nathan, is there anything else you want to do? Any more demos, or are we
I think I'm good.
wrapped
Yeah.
up? All right, chat. If you got any questions for Nathan, you can get those in now. If not, try/fix if you have GitHub Copilot. And again, it's one of the most used commands in GitHub Copilot for a reason. I find that Copilot's remarkably good at fixing errors. Like that's one of the places where it really excels, and it's great to see that Nathan, y'all are working so hard to make it that much better, right? That it can fix not just the error, but the actual problem. Because a lot of times the errors are not telling you what's actually wrong with the code when they are, but it's like the low level problem, not the high level. Yeah, I need all the fix that I can get to, Sean. Nathan, thank you so much. This is in Copilot today. People can
Yeah,
use this
yeah, that
today.
that that was using the current version of Copilot. May need to update it if you have an old version. I did, but, yep, it's the current version.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here, Nathan. We appreciate you. And yeah, check it
Yeah,
out, folks.
thanks for having me. I'll hang around and chat for a bit.
Yeah, awesome. All right, y'all, with that, we're going to move straight into Markdown. Again, a lot of people use VS Code for Markdown. It's heavily, heavily used. And Matt Bierner is here. Matt Bierner, also of Code 2020 fame. What's Code 2020, Matt? We should talk about that too.
So Code 2020 originally, as the name suggested, started in 2020, where I did a VS Code tip or trick every single day for the year. And I've continued that along. It's a YouTube channel, so you can find, it's not going every single day now because that was a whole lot of work, but a lot of helpful tips and tricks. You can go back through the whole archive. I think we've got over 500 videos at this point. Some other things as well, like JavaScript tips, Markdown tips, all these types of things, some deep dives. So you can go check that out over on YouTube and look through the archive, and new content coming out too. Just not every single day because that was a little too much to do.
Yeah, so check that out. What is that? YouTube.com/code 2020?
I think so. I think it's like /C code 2020 or something like that for whatever the YouTube format is for channel links. But yeah.
Did you not get that, like the handle, the @code 2020 or whatever?
I did, but I think it, or maybe it is just the top level thing. I forget how they do it for the links.
Oh, yeah. It's just a top level thing. Yeah, so check that out, y'all. Producer, maybe we can get a youtube.com/code 2020. I always thought it was like 2020 vision. Matt,
well,
that's
how it worked out. Just now it's referring to that, but originally it was for the year.
Thank you, Sean.
And now it's like very more about like the 2020 vision, because didn't want to change the name to be 2021 and have to keep updating it every single year.
2023. All right. Speaking of updating things, this is 1.89 of the release with big change. I didn't say big changes, but they were big for me because I do a lot of blogging. And so specifically with images and previews, there's a lot to love in this latest release of Markdown. Let's do it.
Yeah, so I'm going to show off a few features related to writing Markdown. So the first one is just kind of a nice quality of life update. So let's say that I was working on some Markdown and I wanted to add an image to my current Markdown document. So I have this little to-do comment. Let's just get rid of that. And I'm going to start typing the image syntax here. So just the Markdown image syntax. We provide path completions in Markdown. So you can see that as soon as I started typing here, I get some suggestions for the different folders over here in my Explorer. I'm going to go into the cats folder here because I want a cat image. And now you can see that here's the new feature that I want to show off, is that inside of these completions, we're actually going to get previews of the different images. So I can just go through here, find the image that I'm after, find one of the cats that looks good. If I want to see a little bit more about one of these images, I can also just go and click on it. It'll actually open up in the Explorer. I'll say, oh, that looks pretty good. So let's go and select this one. And I get a nice preview as I'm going and doing those completions. This can just speed up and make sure you're selecting the right image as you're going and adding it to your Markdown document. Now, once you've added it to the document, so now we've actually got the image, this is just a path. And before, what you'd have to do if you wanted to see this image, you could either go over to the Explorer and find it. You could click on the little image link here and actually open it up in a new editor, or you could open up the Markdown preview and actually see that. But what you can now also do is just hover over the image path, and you can actually see that we get a little preview of the image. Again, I can just go and click on it again if I wanted to open it in a Explorer and be able to zoom in and do all of that. But I get these nice little previews without ever having to open up the Markdown preview of what the image that I'm actually inserting is going to be. Now, this also...
That is so nice. It's especially if you write documentation. Chat, curious if y'all write docs. I have a lot in the past, but you end up with a lot of screenshots and they're very similar, right? So it's like, I don't know, VS Code with sidebar highlighted, VS Code with terminal open and sidebar highlighted. And so as you're trying to include the images in your blog post, you can never remember which one is which, and you can't see them. You have to toggle out. So this is dope. I mean, this is the kind of thing that it's small, but it's big.
Yeah, it definitely helps when working on like documentation or inserting images. I found that it just speeds up, and I don't have to open up the Markdown preview as often. I prefer just kind of working on the raw Markdown text, and having that hover functionality and the completions means that I just can work on the text for longer and then preview things when I want to get it ready for actually publishing.
Exactly. You can stay in the writing flow instead of, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I agree, Sean. I do that as well. There's a good question.
Yeah, if you have a GIF, it will show it as animated, so it works for the standard image formats. But let me actually show something pretty cool as well. So let's say I want to insert a video instead. So I'm going to create a video tag because Markdown, typically with the standard Markdown, doesn't have a native video syntax, but you can use just the normal HTML video tag here. And we also get completions for videos, for video paths here. So I'll go to my videos folder and complete that. And you can see that I actually am selecting a folder over here and I get this little preview. Now, this is just a video that's taken from our Markdown documentation, and I get a little preview of the video directly here. If I go and I hover over this, I also get the preview in the hover. So again, this works for videos as well. Audio will be turned off.
Video preview, Matt?
What's that?
Like the whole video, if it's like a 30-minute video, the whole thing will play in the preview?
Yes, so you do get the whole preview. It doesn't have audio in these little previews just because we found that is kind of annoying. So if you actually want to get audio and things, you have to go and be able to actually click on this and open it up. But if you just want a quick like little preview and like you can scrub through it and stuff, you can use the hover or the completions to see what that video actually is going to be.
Man, that is so nice. Yeah, John, I agree. Markdown preview is helpful, but if you can hover and see the thumbnail, it's a lot faster. It takes up a lot less space, right? It's much quicker. Very nice. I agree, John, 100%.
All right, so those are some things for actually writing or completing images and videos and working with those. But I actually want to show off another Markdown feature that I think is going to help speed up writing documentation as well. So this next one is, let's say that you're working on multiple Markdown documents and you're copying and pasting different Markdown content between them. Now, if you have links like this, where it's a relative link, or a link like this, where it's actually linking into the current document. So if I click on the link here, it's going to jump down to the installation section. If you were to copy and paste those to another file, those links would just be broken in many cases because this relative path is now going to be resolved differently. But we've now added a feature that Markdown can go and automatically fix up those links when you copy and paste. Now, this is currently an experimental feature, so I have to actually go to my settings and I'll search for Markdown paste. And then I want to find the Markdown paste. Let's see where it is. Update links on paste. So Markdown experimental update links on paste. At some point, we will probably finalize this setting as well so that it's no longer experimental. But once you turn this on, I can now go and let's say that I wanted to copy just these sections here. So I'm just going to copy the table of contents and the image. Now I'm going to go into a subfolder that has a Markdown document, and I'm going to paste, just doing the normal paste operation. So Control-V or Command-V. And you can see that after pasting here, it has actually gone and fixed up the relative link. So because this is in a subfolder, it has had to add the dot here so that it goes and resolves the image correctly. But it is correctly resolving the image. And you'll notice that for each of the entries in the table of contents here, it has also gone and added a link to the file so that we can link to the original location here. So this is actually going to link to the README to the installation section here.
Nice. That's so nice.
Now, just to show off one thing here, if I undo this and paste again, let's say that I didn't actually want this to happen. I want the exact text that I originally pasted. You can still do that very easily. So I can go back here. And after pasting, there'll be this little widget down here that will allow you to switch how the content is being pasted. And if I didn't want this to happen, you can see that it's currently saying paste and update pasted links. I could just say insert plain text. And now it's going to go and actually paste the original text, the exact text that I copied. This feature works when you're copying and pasting between Markdown files in the current VS Code editor, but it won't work if you're pasting from like a website into Markdown, just because there's no way to know what those links were originally supposed to be between. And you can see that in this instance, if I pasted just as the plain text here, it actually has all these broken links. And I've turned on Markdown error reporting, which is telling us, hey, all of these links are actually broken. So it's just a really nice time saver for not having to go and update those links manually, because that's always a pain and not something you want to have to do manually.
So Matt, question here. This is amazing because there isn't really any way to refactor Markdown per se. And so like the way that this plays out for me though, is usually I have a document that I've written or a post or a docs article. And then I'm like, it really shouldn't be in this folder. It should be in this folder, right? So then I'll take it and I'll drag it and move it. And at that point, everything is broken in the file, right? Because it's because of the move. If I take the text out of the document and then paste it back in, would it update? Do you see what I mean? Like,
yes, I believe so. So there's actually a separate feature, which let me see if it's going to work, because I forget if I have to turn on a setting. So I'll just try a live demo here. So if you go into documentation, let's say that you just wanted to move around the entire file. I'm just going to drag and drop
from one location to another.
Yeah. So I'm going from the documentation folder to the top level. I'll say yes here. Yeah, you can see that I actually turned on a feature where Markdown automatically updated all the links in that file. So that's sort of a special case of like, my folder is in the wrong location. And I think the setting is called Markdown update links on file move.
Oh, it's already there.
Yeah, this is one that's been in a longer time. And the default is to not do this. You can make VS Code prompt you or turn it on so that it will always do it automatically, which is what I have it set to. So that's like a special case of I'm just wanting to move the entire folder or entire file to a new location. If I actually go back here, let's just move this back into documentation. This new setting is specifically for like I am copying and pasting just little sections of text. Like I copied this image and then was going to paste it over here. It just is automatically going to fix up that link for me without me having to do any extra work. It's sort of how you'd expect it to work, but saving you that extra time of having to fix it up afterwards.
I had no idea. Chat, did you know this? Did y'all know that the Markdown would update on move? I feel like we should make the default for that prompt. Does it prompt all the time or only if there's links in the Markdown? In other words, if it's just text, would it prompt you anyway just because you moved it?
I think the reason why it is not the default is because even if there aren't links, we have to go and see if there could be anybody else pointing at the current document. So it does have to then look through all of the Markdown files in your repository, which can slow things down.
I got you.
So it's one that I think is a good experience, and you definitely want people to turn it on. But we do have to do some extra work, even if there's no edit in the end. You will not see a prompt if there are no links that need to be updated. But we still had to scan through all of the other Markdown files because it's not just updating for this feature. It's not just updating links in the file itself. If there was anybody pointing to this file, it would also update all of those Markdown documents too.
So here's a good question, and I think I'm going to try to articulate this, and hopefully I get this right. But I think they're asking, like, you have a cats folder there. What if you rename that folder or move that folder? Does it have any effect on the underlying documents that reference it?
Yeah. So if I go and rename one of these images, for example, so I'll say cat, let's do cat 10 instead. New Ethernet standard. You can see that it's updated all of the links here. So this setting, the Markdown update links on file move, also applies to images and things that you've linked to.
Okay, so you can move the images folder itself, and it will go through and update all the Markdown documents that reference that.
Yeah, so you could actually update the image. I think if you do this one too, so let me just update the image folder here. So I'll rename it from cats to images. Yes, it will also go and update these.
That is incredible. That is incredible.
So yeah, this should save some time. And this one is one that's been in for quite a while, but maybe not as many people have discovered it. One other thing is that you mentioned you can't really refactor Markdown. You sort of can here. So if I actually wanted to rename, let's say I was in my Markdown document here, and I wanted to rename this image. I was like, oh, this is a bad name. So I'll say, let's just go here, and I'm going to give this image a new name. So I'm going to press F2 to start a rename here. You can actually enter a new name. So I'll say relaxing cat. And now I've gone and updated the actual path in the file. But also if I go into the images folder here, the image itself has been updated, and all links to it have also been updated in other files. So you can use F2 to go and update these as well. This also works on like headers. So if I wanted to say, let's go down here to this header, and you can see there's a link pointing to it up here. If I say F2 on this header and say, change this to install.
See what Copilot wants it to be.
Yeah, now it's gone and updated it to actually point to the new header name that we've created here. So
Matt, I feel like this is, first of all, I have totally failed at my job of helping developers understand what's in VS Code, but also this is like the perfect Markdown tips session. I had no idea any of this was actually possible. What are the settings that need to be turned on for this to actually happen? Like, for instance, you just did the rename of the image. Is there a specific setting that needs to be on, or is that just on? And you did the, what was the other thing you just did?
Yeah, so I can, so for renaming things with F2, that is always on. So you can just go to a header, press F2, rename it, and it'll update all links to that header, or go to an image path in a Markdown file, press F2, and actually update the image plus all points. It might take a little while the very first time you trigger it, because in larger projects, it has to go and find all of the places that are linking to that file as well to make sure they're updated. Now, for the other ones, if you wanted to automatically update images when you actually rename the image over in the Explorer, for instance. That is going to be the Markdown update links on file move setting. And again, I've set it to always here, but you could go and change it depending on your preference. So this one, Markdown update links on file move, is things happening over in the VS Code file explorer. Now, if you want it to be on when you're copying and pasting text, so let's just go back here to our original example. If I go and copy and paste this text, paste it into the file here, automatically fixes up the link. That's what I first showed. That's going to be the Markdown paste. It's the Markdown experimental update links on paste setting. So right now, this is still experimental. The name will probably change in the future, but wanting to give people a chance to test this out and actually see how it can improve their workflows. One other cool thing I do want to show about this, because I forgot to mention it, you'll notice that in the table of contents here, there's this one section here, or this one link here, that is using a reference link. And this is a syntax in Markdown that lets you give the link a name. So instead of actually entering the link destination directly over here, you're going to just refer to a link that's defined at the bottom of the file. And the advantage of this is that you can go and create links in multiple locations with just reusing the same link that you defined at the bottom of the file. So here we've given it the name docs. And at the bottom of the file, we said anything that has this docs link is just going to point to example.com. Now, if I copy over the table of contents here, you can see that I didn't actually select the definition down here, but I am selecting something that contains the definition and is using that link. Now, when I go and paste it over here, you'll notice that it has automatically added that definition. So if you have these reference links, those also get brought along as part of this feature, which is, again, quite helpful, because without this link is actually going to be broken. So you can see that if I go and remove that, there's nothing there, no link definition.
And that's also part of the paste setting.
Yes. Yeah. So the paste setting is like, it will fix up everything that it can when you paste text between files.
Incredible. Matt, I feel like we should make a video, like the ultimate guide to Markdown and Visual Studio Code, and just let you go off. Ian said, I think it should always prompt, but make it a naive prompt that doesn't check first. So it would always prompt. Don't like it? Change the setting linked in the prompt. I don't know, Ian. Couldn't that be kind of annoying, though? Like every single time it's like, do you want to update links? You're like, there are no links.
Yeah, I think
interesting idea, though.
We could do something like, if it's a small enough project, turn it on by default. Like if there's only 100 Markdown files, we can scan through those pretty quickly. But if there's 10,000 Markdown files and you're updating the links, it does take some time to figure out. Especially, we like do some logic so that we cache it after the first time you trigger it. But on the very first time, we do need to go look through all those Markdown files, make sure there are no other links to update.
All right. Theorem Geek says rename applies to files within the root of the sandbox, ? Or does it have a more limited coverage? Limit used on a certain folder.
So rename, if you're in the Markdown file and you rename something, it will try looking through all other Markdown files to also update links that are pointing to the same item. So if I renamed the file here, for instance, using F2, and let's say I just did read, it will update any other links that are also pointing to the README. And it will also then update the original file over there.
Theorem, do we explain that? Let us know.
There is no way to scope it to just a specific folder, but in general, the links that you have should only be resolved in a specific context, I guess. Like all of the valid links that are pointing to the original file should kind of be found with this feature. And you would typically not have, I guess, multiple Markdown like subprojects that are using different syntax, I guess, to point to the README file.
All right, Agent, I'm going to try this. While using F2 to rename symbol, how deep does it go? So I think this is more of a rename question, Matt. Let's say you have made a copy of a component in Angular, the entire folder, 3 to 5 files. If I rename the class, would it only rename it in the current folder?
So this is up to each language extension. And for Angular specifically, you do need the Angular extension installed because it has like a mix of HTML and JavaScript and TypeScript and all of that. So it is really up to them to implement it. And different languages have different conventions. Like in some languages, the file name should always basically match the class name, but that is not always true. So in JavaScript and TypeScript, rename will always update every single reference to that, whatever you're renaming. And the same in Markdown. we never in JavaScript and TypeScript choose to touch the folder that you're currently in. But for Angular, they might do that. So it's really up to each language and how to handle this.
Sorry, I'm multitasking. Yeah, +1 for the Markdown guide. Mod says Matt's going to need to make it the ultimate guide to Markdown and Visual Studio Code. But maybe you already have something.
Yeah, so we have the VS Code docs page for Markdown. Also covers many of these. It doesn't have the new paste feature because it's still experimental, but it does talk about some features that you might not know about for our Markdown support. And then for my Code 2020 channel, I also have a bunch of videos that are related to Markdown out there. What I don't have right now is a single like VS Code Markdown playlist, but that sounds like a good thing to create, where you could just go through and watch all of the tips and tricks related to Markdown in VS Code that I've posted. So I might be creating that later this morning.
Perfect. Did we, what does it say? Fuel, what do you want? Did we get the check if comments in code is out of sync AI feature? That's actually a very interesting idea. Right? The AI is like, yo, I don't know what this comment is, but it has nothing to do with this code.
No, I don't know about that, but I think there is an extension out there that will type check any code blocks that you have in your Markdown to make sure that if you're using example code, for instance, it is valid, especially if you like change the name somewhere in your project, that your example code in your Markdown docs is valid. But off the top of my head, I can't remember, but I have seen an extension that does that.
Yeah, it's like a comment linter, $1 billion. I don't know, maybe $1,000 idea. I don't know if it's maybe it's $1 billion. What do I know? All right. Chat, anything else? Maybe Windows Copilot. Then it can ask for VS Code Markdown. Interesting. Maybe Windows Copilot has been fed info, then can ask it for VS Code Markdown tips. Oh, so like you could just ask Copilot for Markdown tips. I wonder what would happen in GitHub Copilot if you said, like at VS Code, what are some tips and tricks for using Markdown in VS Code?
So I think it will not have knowledge of the most recent feature that I just showed off, but it probably could answer some other ones because especially some of these features have been around long enough that Copilot will have knowledge of them. I just don't think that I forget if we actually look at the release notes as well for the @VS Code feature in Copilot, but that is something worth trying. I suspect it probably doesn't know about this feature that I just added though.
Yeah, that's probably true. All right. Matt, thank you so much for being here, man. That was great. Nathan's actually still here as well. He's in the background chat if you want to ask questions about TypeScript or linting. Does Copilot work for IAC? Is that inversion of control? No. What is that? Infrastructure as code. Oh, so like what is that? What would that be, Matt? Like bicep,
Terraform or
Terraform?
Yeah, I think. It depends what language you're working in. If it has a lot of examples and like is a fairly common language, it's generally better. If you're working on something really esoteric or something that your company has invented, it will try to guess based on what it looks like, but it won't always get it right in those cases. So it really depends what language you're working on.
And in that case, you could write a Copilot extension using the new APIs, run it through LangChain, do a little RAG action in your extension. Lots more coming on that, y'all. Stay tuned on Copilot extensions. We got more content coming your way. We've been working hard on that, so that's coming up soon. I want to thank Nathan and Matt for being here. Great demos this morning. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate your time. Check out Code 2020. Nathan, where can people find you if they want to just chat with you? Can they?
Yeah.
Are you on the internet?
If you check out the TypeScript Discord, I'm on there quite a bit. I hang out in the compiler channel mostly. Surprise, surprise. But yeah, shout out to the TypeScript Discord. It's full of cool people that can help you with TypeScript questions and also chat about random stuff.
And Matt's got a dope TypeScript hoodie. Where do we get one of those, Matt?
Ooh, I don't know if they're available outside the TypeScript team.
Oh no, we don't have them in the Microsoft store for the low price of like $85.
No, I don't think so.
All right, to that. All right, thank you so much for being here, chat. We'll see you in a few weeks for the next release party. I thought we had another live stream coming up, but off the top of my head, I don't know. Yeah, Ahmad, thanks for being here. John, Fuel, as always, Ian, Sean, chat, y'all were great. Really enjoyed being with y'all this morning, and I hope you have a great weekend. See y'all soon. Bye.